Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Colts Cover 2 podcast. I am IndyStar Colts insider Jim Ayello, and I am joined, as always, by fellow insider and co-host Joel A. Erickson. And we are, finally, the week of the draft, 3 days away. Are you excited?
Yes. Yeah.
Main reason you're excited.
Mostly because it's time to watch draft day. But
I haven't watched it yet, and I told you I would before the draft, so I gotta schedule that in one of these nights. Is it streaming somewhere?
You can own it for $7 on Amazon Prime right now.
That's too much money.
No, it's not.
$7?
That's not too much. To be able to watch it anytime you want for the rest of your life.
Okay. Well, how many times have you watched it recently? I mean,
I've only one rewatch in, but
this like week or last week.
Last week, but it ratchets itself up this week.
This is my favorite Joel ritual. I can't quite understand it. I guess I gotta see the movie. I watch Bull Durham before every baseball season.
I just enjoy it. I just enjoy everything about it.
Is it? I mean, you understand, right? That I assume you this is it's a terrible watch. It's like a garbage movie, but you love it anyway. This is what this is.
Yeah, it's not realistic.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not watching it because I'm like, oh, this is giving me some sort of insight into something. It's just it's great. It's every draft cliche taken to the nth degree, and I think that's part of why I like it so much.
Okay.
The idea that the character stuff overreaches everything. Well, that comes into huge play a couple times, and
oh yeah,
the owner forcing the GM to do things he doesn't want to do is in there, and fights between the coach and the owner. Plus, just the way trades are depicted is just wonderful. It's just wonderful. Kevin Costner at one point insults another GM into doing a trade, and I know that's not how it happens, but man, it'd be fun if it did.
It might. I don't know. That was kind of like the way Brad Pitt did stuff in Moneyball too. So maybe that's kind of how. Maybe that's how it works.
Plus, it's fun to think about how good certain players are mentioned in there. I know there's some people who watch it and they can't believe they take a linebacker first, but he had 4 sacks against Wisconsin. He's a pass rusher. Khalil Mack is taking Khalil Mack first. It's not taking an off the ball guy.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense to me.
But there's also a punt returner so good that when they're in the middle of making a trade and they want to tack something on to be jerks, they immediately think of this punt returner as the guy.
Oh.
And
hey, sorry, we're back. There's a little awkward pause there. Joel had a minor family emergency that I think is taken care of, right, Joel?
Yeah, just some typical work from home. Two people trying to work at the same time, and kids in the house, and emergency, that type of stuff. So
actually, this is a good lead-in to another topic I want to talk about. We're going to get into a lot of things Colts related, obviously, but there's some new. We haven't done a podcast in a while, so we're going to cover some news. But let's just because I liked what this little interruption because of the family. Chris Ballard talked about that and how that will probably happen to him during the draft. You'll see a dog or a kid or something like that. I mean. It didn't sound like when we talked to Chris Ballard late last week on Friday that he was that concerned about the technology aspect of this draft. But it's something that the NFL and teams are preparing for to try to make go as smoothly as possible. So what did you kind of get out of Chris? What did you learn from what Chris said about kind of how this is going to go and whether or not the Colts are concerned about how it'll operate?
Well, I think they're mostly concerned about whether or not that someone can hack into their Zoom.
Yeah.
Or whatever they're using. I assume they're not using Zoom.
Well, he said they've rotated a few times. They've tried.
He said
yeah.
He said something interesting there. He said something along the lines of they've tried different things just to keep people from figuring out what they're doing, which is wow. The paranoia is nuts.
I was gonna say you really have to not trust Bill Belichick to do this. That was my first instinct on that. Man. Because you'd think there would be an honor system there with everybody kind of going through the same thing, but Ballard twice, I think, during that press conference referenced like trying to make sure no one hacks their communication.
Yeah, he hinted at that, which I'm kind of one of those people who like. Well, I might be the only person. I might be one of the only people who's doing it because the prevailing news, I feel like, is everyone talking about like, what if the power goes out? What if this goes? I just don't think it's going to be that big of a deal.
Yeah, I think in that regard, Chris kind of just laughed. He's like, "Listen, if everything goes out, I'll just pick up my phone and make a call and make the pick." Which
and I made this joke on Twitter, so people who follow me on Twitter have already seen this. It's not really a joke either. I think it's valid. When those storms rolled through, I guess it's probably 2 weeks ago now, and knocked out power to a bunch of Indianapolis. I didn't have power for 3 hours, and my cell phone was charged. One of my laptops was charged. There's an iPad that's charged, and we have a hotspot. And I cannot, like, I could have, if I was drafting, I could have done just fine. And I cannot imagine that an NFL general manager with access to as many funds as they have access to doesn't have that.
I agree. I don't think this is going to be. I mean, I think there might be a glitch or two, or something happens. But from what I understood, I talked to some people with the Colts, and they were like, the NFL has been pretty clear that they're going to be loose reins on this. If something goes wrong, they'll be like, okay, we'll pause the draft, or we'll try to like give you, they're gonna get cut some slack here, I think.
And also, I think it's important to say that a really, really long time ago, before the draft became what it was today, what it is now, it was held remotely anyway.
Yeah, right.
Without the technology we have now. So I think they're going to be fine.
Listen, I played like multiple games with my family via Zoom and the internet last night, and it went off without a hitch. So I think that the NFL, with all their enormous amounts of money and resources, can figure out how to do what every fantasy league does every year.
Yeah, it doesn't. To me, like, I get that it's a little bit different, but for the most part, the draft's virtual anyway.
Right. Because
teams have their draft rooms in terms of like actually making the picks, because their draft rooms happen here in Indianapolis or in New Orleans or in Green Bay. Like,
right.
They're not all at the draft. And as far as everyone gathering together, like, I get that you want to have everybody in the same meeting room, but people have figured that out in every business. It's ridiculous to think that for some reason what the NFL does is so complicated, just talking to each other, that they can't figure that out in today's day and age.
I completely agree. I think they'll figure it out. And to be honest with you, I think that's the reason Chris, like, every time we asked a question on Friday about like, how do you think you'll handle this, he kind of just laughed it off, like, it'll be fine. We'll figure it out. It's not a big deal. Like, that'll be fine. Like I said, like we talked about earlier, the only thing he really worried about was being hacked. So, which is interesting, and I don't think will happen. But obviously, that would be bad. I mean, if somebody could hack in and kind of hear you talking or look at your draft board, that would be a significant leg up. So, but
and they do want to know. Teams really badly want to know when people are going to pick people. Obviously, because that's why trades are made, because they think someone's going to get them.
Right.
So they're already trying to get that kind of intelligence. If you use something like, I don't know enough about tech, so somebody who's very tech savvy can tweet at us and tell me how much of a tech idiot I am. But I don't think everything is as hackable as Zoom. And so if you're having really important conversations, like, I don't think it's very easy to hack someone's text messages.
I don't know. This is you're getting. I am also a tech dummy, so I have no idea.
Like, because if you have just for example, if you have iPhones, like, my text messages, I text through my computer when I'm sitting at my desk, and when a crime is committed or something, there's always this big legal battle over whether or not the Apple will unlock somebody's iPhone so they can get in to look at it.
Yeah.
And I would assume that if you could just hack into someone's text, it'd be easier to just do that, and they would have to ask so much.
I was told during the combine, I don't remember who I was talking to, an agent or somebody, but they were telling me that there's this new thing that a lot of agents and players and executives use. It's this new like text app or thing. I can't even remember what it's called, but essentially it's like that Mission Impossible type feature where You get the text, and then like 24 hours later, it disappears. Like it just goes into the ether. So there's no track record of it.
There's a lot of words here, but I think the thing is, I don't think the Colts are really that worried about it, and I don't think you or I think it's going to be a big deal.
No, correct. All right, so but before you and I are going to do, just to give people kind of a preview of what's coming up, we're going to do a mock draft and talk about what we think the Colts are going to do. We'll talk about that today a little bit, but the mock draft and that heavy focus on prospects and stuff will be on Wednesday. We'll do that Wednesday either afternoon or night, and then you'll have hopefully all day Thursday to listen to it, and then on Friday you can tell us how we screwed everything up. So that'll be good. But today, it's because it's been a little bit of time since we've done a podcast. We're going to get into some of the news we haven't really addressed, and then, like I said, then we'll jump back into the draft. So I want to get into Joel's all-time favorite topic right now, Colts jerseys. I expect a 10-minute like full-on rant. So just go for it. Go ahead, Joe. I'll open the mic to you.
I like the new secondary logo. That's the extent of my. That's it. Everything else, just nothing.
Nothing? You got nothing?
No, like.
I had optimism for this because you had takes on the Patriots' new jerseys, so I thought maybe this would it'd open you up a little bit.
The word Colts looks different, so they just changed the font on their computer.
Didn't you get your draft gear in the mail?
Yes.
What did you think?
I like the secondary logo.
I love prying this out of you. This is really fun for me.
I don't like. Listen to this. I am not the type of person who would buy. Like, one of the things that they sent as like a promotion for this is a black Colts hat.
Yeah.
That new Anvil black. I am very against apparel that is not the color of not one of the colors of the actual team. And I know technically Anvil black is now part of it, but I'm like the Colts are blue and white. So that if you have a Colts hat, it should be blue and white. in my vernacular.
I mean, I could not more wholeheartedly disagree with you, but I do like that you're having takes, so I'm just going to keep letting you go. I like that's a hot take. I like that. No hats that aren't the primary colors.
No, I don't understand it. There's so many different ways you can deploy colors on something. Like, I just don't understand why you need it. Like, what's the point of using a color that's not your color?
I don't know. New designs. I like the black, actually. I thought the black hat looked good, but
yeah, it's not my thing. It's not my thing. This is a long-standing one going back to Jim and I both went to Missouri, and I'm sure this is true at every school, but I just remember like everyone had like Mizzou shirts that were like pastel colors and blue, and I'm like, this is dumb. Like,
rooted in tradition. I like it. Like I said, it seems like you do.
Colors at the school are black
and yellow
and gold, and white. Yep. So yeah, there you got three colors to work with there. That's it.
I like I said, I see. I think you're wrong. I think you do have. I think you do have hot takes on jerseys and colors and uniforms. I think it's all coming out of you now. I love it.
That's not a jersey take. That's a clothing take.
That's something though. That's something.
That's a clothing take. I like you. Yeah, just stick with the primary colors of the team.
For my money, I don't love the new logo. It's not my favorite. I get that it's a sideways horseshoe and you got the grommets and I get it. It's not my favorite, but like I said, sometimes new things take time to let them sink in. So I'll give it time to resonate a little bit more, and we'll see. We'll see how they put it on other gear. And then I'm with you on the new that they call it a word mark. I don't know when we stopped calling things fonts, but it looked like a new font to me. But that is fine. It doesn't look that much different to me. And so the jersey numbers. Did you notice a major difference? I think there's like kind of like slight differences in those. So.
I feel really bad because the people who worked on this, I'm sure, worked really hard on it. I really hope they don't listen to this podcast. I looked at the jersey stuff like 6 times before, like, I realized, like, there was the one video where the Colts like showed you what the differences were,
Yeah.
and without that, I had no idea.
Somebody, I saw a couple people were saying, is this one of those like pictures where you have to spot the differences, but there are no differences?
I could not tell the difference. I had no idea.
Well, you got the Nike swoosh. That's the only thing the Anvil Black will actually be on the uniforms. Will be the Nike swoosh. And
Which I'll be honest, I didn't know they were Nike jerseys before. I didn't know that.
I actually don't know if they were Nike before. I know that Nike tends to make hideous jerseys. So, like, I think aren't they responsible for the new Atlanta and Tampa Bay jerseys? I'm pretty sure Nike is.
I don't know.
Okay, we can get off this topic soon because I know we've exhausted everything that you had, and I'm proud of you. I really am. So let's get into something you know a little bit better. We haven't talked about Roosevelt Nix. The Colts had a fullback. They haven't really had a fullback. Didn't have one last year. You kind of went to.
They had one in 2018. Though.
Yeah. It was kind of a hybrid tight end fullback situation.
Well, Ryan Hewitt was mostly playing fullback.
Mostly fullback. Okay.
I mean, he did some inline stuff, just because he was such a good blocker. But like I always thought of him as the fullback, and he played 182 snaps that year.
Okay. So let me. That's a great question then. Over under 182 snaps for Rosie Nix this year.
I say under because he doesn't have the inline ability as much. Although they could deploy him that way.
Yeah, why not? Right? If you wanted to go 6 instead of going 6 linemen or something, you could just stick him on the end.
But I think you probably see him, 8-9 times a game.
Okay. Does this? I mean, well, the real question, of course, with Roosevelt Nix coming here is: does this spell the end of Quentin Nelson in the backfield?
I think so.
Oh,
I think Frank said that last year that they probably weren't going to do that again. I did like the idea that a fan tweeted at me after they signed him, saying line up Nix in front of Nelson. Which is that's sort of like that's when you hit someone with a hammer and then hit them with a sledgehammer.
So Roosevelt Nix is the running back and then Nelson is the fullback? Is that what you're saying?
No, Nix is the fullback and Nelson is the running back.
Oh my God! Get out of the way is what I'd say.
That'd be a very Wisconsin college football thing to do. Let's just put as many big guys out there as we can.
Well, it might work. I mean, a lot of these defenses are going small and fast. If you get some beef out there, maybe. I do
looking for that jumbo package that I can't remember what they call it. Wisconsin has some package that has 7 offensive linemen on the field at the same time, or 9 or something.
Okay.
8, some enormous amount of offensive linemen, and I could see the Colts wanting to do that.
3 times a year, maybe. Yeah.
But. And it's interesting because I don't think they were that bad in short yardage last year.
No, that was that was the real question I had for you. Is not the Quentin Nelson thing, but so much as what do you think the addition of Rosie Nix was about? Why are we doing this when they ran very, very effectively without a fullback last year?
I think it gives them more options running the football. It gives them more ways to counter when teams are playing well against them.
Okay.
I think the other thing is, and I think everyone, including me, in the initial writing of the Roosevelt Nix stories. Downplayed the fact that he's a core special teamer, like a 4-core, plays on every team, really good player. And so I think in a way you're getting a player on offense who's very, very good on special teams, which is sometimes hard to find.
Yeah, right.
Guys that can help on offense and really help on special teams. And I think that's what helps.
I actually think that that's a really, really good point. I'm with you on the under. I don't think we'll see a ton of Roosevelt Nix. I think 9 or 10 times a game seems like I think 9 or 10 might be on the high end. But
I think so too. I think it'll be matchup specific. And Nick sort of said that too. He sort of said that there are some times where the game plan doesn't really call for the fullback as much.
Right. There will be games where he's pretty much a special teamer primarily, I would think.
And they know that going in. But there's going to be some games where they want to go heavy, and there's going to be some games where they want to go heavy, and they want to use the fullback a bunch. I could pull it up right now, but that's sort of the way Ryan Hewitt's life went in terms of snaps. It would go up and down and up and down. And that's just kind of the way it works for fullbacks now.
On the game plan. Let me ask you a roster depth question. Does Roosevelt Nix take away a spot from another tight end, or does Roosevelt Nix take away a spot from another running back?
That's a good question, but I also need to know, did the CBA expand how many players are available on Sunday?
Yes. Isn't it 55 now? Or am I crazy?
I think it's 55, and I should really know this.
Yeah, well, to be fair to us, it's been...
Oh, there you go. I found it. The active game day roster will increase from 46 to 48.
Okay. Yes.
Practice squads are expanded.
Yes, and rosters expand from 53 to 55. I'm looking at that now.
So he doesn't take anybody's spot.
Okay, fair enough. So, yeah, you're right. So these kind of... So if you want to look at it, like looking at last year's Colts roster with what they had on it, they usually had, 3 active tight ends and 3 active running backs? Does that sound right?
Correct.
So then you can just add Roosevelt Nix as a 54th player, technically. And then...
In 2018, though, I think that when they had the option, they had 4 tight ends available a lot. I think he would probably be that guy.
Okay, so instead of going 4 tight ends, you think... if they had to decide between 4 tight ends and 4 running backs, you'd probably add a 4th tight end and classify him as a running back. In just the roster breakdown looking at this, would be my guess. Assuming everyone's healthy, by the way.
I think it's 3 tight ends and him, and then maybe 4 halfbacks.
Oh, you think 4 halfbacks? See, I would go with just assuming everyone's healthy, it would just be Marlon, Wilkins, and Naheem, and then Rosie, and then 3 tight ends. But
because they really like to carry those 4 tailbacks, even when they don't use them. Jonathan Williams has been on the active roster for a lot over the last 2 years. Without playing as much.
I just wonder if Roosevelt Nix is kind of that 4th running back then, and because he plays special teams that they don't do that. But I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, it'll be interesting early on in the year to see how the Colts kind of deploy those extra running backs, extra tight ends, and then receivers, obviously. So and we'll have to figure out what they do there. So real quick, last bit of news before we get in. Only because you talked to me on the phone the other day about it. You have a hot take on the jersey numbers, so I wanted the switches.
Rock Yassin switched from 34 to 20-something, right?
Yes. I'm going to check now. I actually didn't write it down, and I should have written it down before I went, but... Oh, I just lost internet, too. This is all bad. This is all bad.
Rock Yassin switched numbers.
Yeah, for no reason, almost. That was kind of a weird one.
And 34 is a great football number.
Yeah.
It's an all-time football number. And he switched to a 20s. And I get that a lot of times defensive backs want their number to be in the 20s. But, yeah, no, I don't fully get that.
Okay, I got it. I'm pulling it up now. I got it now. We got internet. Okay, so Rock went from 34 to 26.
Yeah, 26 isn't a good number.
Help me out. I should know this better. Did 26 free up?
Yes, Clayton Gathers.
Yeah, okay, so there you go. So maybe he was always a 26 guy and just wanted it?
That's possible.
Okay.
Probably highly probable. He probably liked 26, and then obviously Gathers had it. So some of that, the interesting one. The interesting one is that Justin Houston is back to 50, and DeForest Buckner is 99. That moves Anthony Walker to 54.
Correct.
But that was sort of just making sure that everyone has the number that they've been associated with.
Right, except Anthony. So I am very curious because Anthony I had a long conversation, not a long conversation, but like a 5-minute conversation with Anthony toward the end of the year about the conversation he had with Justin Houston about 50, and he made me laugh. He kept talking about how the only thing he knew about Justin Houston when he came to the Colts was that he was like the first $100 million defender, which was making me. And he was like, yeah, so I knew he had some money. And I'm like, so the offer wasn't enough? And then Anthony just kind of smiled and was like, I still have 50, don't I? I was like, okay. So I wonder if Justin boosted the number, the offer, or if DeForest helped kind of maybe he.
I was going to say, is this a thing where DeForest just facilitated the whole deal?
That's what I think happened because DeForest comes in and wants 99, and maybe he chips in to the Anthony Walker 50 fund and gets.
Maybe it was a double payout. Maybe it was a double payout where he had to pay both Houston and...
well, he's got a lot of new money, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll be curious to ask those guys about how that all shook out. I think you and I might be the only ones interested in that, but I will be curious to know how that happened. But I will say here's one of those things. I always feel sympathy. Like I remember when I was tweeting about this originally when they signed Buckner, I said, "Oh, I wonder what's going to happen to Justin Houston." And somebody tweeted at me and said, "I just bought my Justin Houston '99 jersey," and I was just, ugh. So you really would hope the Colts would be like, all right, trade it in, get you the new 50.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. No, that stinks. I always think about like selfishly, I don't like it when players change numbers because in my head when I'm watching games, I associate their number.
Yeah.
And it's not bad when they do it in the off season. Usually, because usually I have a whole training camp to kind of figure out that the number has changed.
Right.
But whoever has 34 next year, I'm going to be thinking of them as rock for a long time, no matter what they play. DeForest Buckner is going to make plays. I'm going to think it's Justin Houston. It's just...
Nah. I was going to say, I agree with you unless the body types are so different, and Justin Houston and DeForest Buckner, it'll be fine. You'll be fine.
I don't know. I've had trouble with it with positions before in my head. Like it's just the number is such an ingrained part of the way I watch the game that it does throw me off. But it's also weird for Anthony Walker, who's been 50 for a long time now.
Yeah, 3 years. This would have been year 4 for him.
Suddenly has a different number in the NFL. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but.
No, I mean, that one I agree with.
I like it when guys have their number and then they just stick with it, which I guess is what happens here because DeForest Buckner's like, well, I've had 99. I want to stick with it.
Right. No, the one who screws everything up is Rock. Rock just being like, yeah, I want a new number. So.
Yeah. No, if they have another cornerback with 34, it's going to drive me insane.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if they draft somebody that takes that number, which is actually, I think it's good. I think we're at that point now where we can get into the draft and we'll, like I said, this will be kind of our mini preview, and then we'll get into a much bigger preview on Wednesday. But we did get a chance to talk to Chris Ballard on Friday, and I mean, I think you and I both agree. We both wrote about it the day that he talked. The biggest topic I think for the Colts is quarterback, and is going to be quarterback. And so I'll just kind of say what Chris said, and then you can kind of comment on what you think about it. But Chris has pretty much said for the third time this offseason, and among his I think he's made 3 public appearances in terms of comments. It was, right after the season, at the Combine, and on Friday. And every time he has repeated the refrain, we are not going to force it at quarterback. And to me, that is starting to sound like we maybe don't like this quarterback class, or we really don't see the guy we think is the future of our team in this quarterback class. I could be reading too much into it, but that's what it's starting to sound like to me. What did you hear from Chris? Because it sounded like he's like, you know what? We got Rivers, we got Brissett. We're comfortable going into 2020.
Yeah, I think the storyline of quarterback going forward, I think the whole idea that might be the story of next year's draft too.
Yeah, this could be like a Groundhog Day situation.
Sort of saying that I don't know that there's going to be a pick there this year.
Yeah.
And maybe there is. Maybe they like one of the mid-round guys. Maybe somebody slides that they're not expecting to. We've reached the point of the draft speculation, even just this morning, that we reach every year where I cannot tell if any of it makes any sense whatsoever.
I completely agree.
Like Jordan Love now people are saying could last until 45, and a month ago he was like a top 10 guy. It's just like,
yeah. Go ahead.
It's really hard to tell what's going on with everything. But I think the tendency of quarterbacks to get pushed up and the need for a lot of teams, I still think that there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks that come off the board.
I agree. Here's what I'll say. I don't know what you think, but having read some, and obviously you're a football fan, and I have been my whole life, and you have too. So you read Peter King because everybody reads Peter King. I think his takes are pretty good usually, and he's about as well connected as a reporter gets. I actually think he has a pretty good connection with the Colts. We've seen Chris Ballard kind of jump into Peter King's thing and write columns before. I thought this was interesting. He just released his mock draft, and he didn't have Jordan Love going in the first round, but he does mention at the end 2 teams he thinks could be interested in Jordan Love: Green Bay at 62 and Pittsburgh at 49. Doesn't mention the Colts.
Interesting.
Two teams that could be in on Jalen Hurts. He's got Baltimore at 55 and Atlanta at 47. Doesn't mention the Colts.
Oh, that's very interesting. Peter's mock drafts are routinely terrible, but
actually, I was gonna say he actually posted. He actually did pretty good. He put his results in from last year,
and they were good.
Yeah. Okay, so last year he hit 26 of 32 first rounders. That's not bad. He had 9 players picked by the right team, which is pretty good. I think
that's really good.
Yeah,
that's
and he got 8 of the slots. So.
Yeah, no, 8. If you can get to 8, that's usually the best.
I was going to say, I mean, I don't know what his historically is, but that's a pretty good year last year. So I'm going to give him that.
No, 8 or 9 is usually the best. 8 or 9 is usually the best one in that. So he had a really good draft last year.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I just thought.
I apologize to him wherever he is for thinking that he did terrible.
One final thing I just wanted to mention, because this is nuts. I haven't read this whole story yet, but the craziest rumor he's heard is that the Chiefs want to trade up for Henry Ruggs. So just enjoy that. McCole Hardman, Tyreek Hill, Henry Ruggs.
Of course the Chiefs want to trade up for Henry Ruggs. Why wouldn't they trade up for Henry Ruggs?
Oh, and Sammy Watkins. Is that 4 guys that run 4 threes?
Yeah.
That's fun. Okay, just for fun. Good luck to every team in the AFC. Anyway, the point being is it's starting to sound like Peter King. I only mentioned it as evidence that it's really starting to seem like the Colts are not interested in a quarterback this year.
It is starting to seem like that.
Could be a smokescreen.
It's starting to feel like, and it could be a smokescreen. But I think when they traded the 13th pick, I think that was an indicator that they weren't in love with anybody that they thought they could get.
Yeah, and I wrote something to that degree was like, okay, that kind of reflects on at least the top end of the class, and to be honest, I think it reflects on the rest of the class, because I think you're at 13, you could trade back and get the guy you want, you can get extra picks to make sure you get the guy you want in the second round. Like, there were ways to make sure that you get a quarterback in this draft if you wanted one, and trading 13 does nothing to help that. Right.
I don't know. It's so hard to tell. Like, and it's so hard to tell right now. Like, if that's the right, because it all comes down to whether or not they like somebody in the draft, or whether or not somebody in this draft pans out.
Yeah.
And we don't know that now. Like, you can watch as much tape as you want to. You can say a bunch of stuff. I respect a lot of the work the draft analysts do, but we really don't know. And so, it's interesting. It's interesting to wonder about a guy like Jacob Eason. I am not a fan of Jalen Hurts, but it'll be interesting to see what they do. It'll be because there are other spots. I know when I've done mocks for the Colts, my temptation is not to take quarterback, especially after Rivers. My temptation is to fill other spots and keep filling other spots.
I get that to me. And again, I just look at the odds of the odds fall off of finding a franchise caliber quarterback after the first round. Everybody has the examples they could start throwing out there. You could throw out Russell Wilson and Tom Brady and Dak Prescott, and they're out there. There are examples of it. It gets harder and harder as you go. And if you don't get guy in the second or the third, I don't know. I have less faith in that guy than I would somebody in the first. And I know that sounds stupid, but I don't know. I think the history of the draft has been most of the time you're finding franchise-changing quarterbacks. You're finding them in the first round.
Or you're finding them from some other team.
Right. Because
a lot of the guys that didn't get drafted in the first round who are now, because there were a ton of them in the playoffs this year that were not first-round quarterbacks, but a lot of them were like Kirk Cousins. Washington obviously drafted him, and then Minnesota signed him. Jimmy Garoppolo, the Patriots drafted him. The 49ers traded for him.
Breeze.
There's a lot of guys like that where they get picked, and then they end up. The ones that end up moving somewhere, it's a trade or something like that. That's how they end up where they end up.
Yeah. No, I mean you're right, and it's definitely possible. I don't want to rule it out. They can get a guy in the second or third round, and he could become the future of the franchise. I guess it's just weird when you're looking at the Colts history, right? Number one pick. That's pretty much been their franchise, in Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. So, but again, you got to trust that Chris Ballard is a good scout, that Frank Reich knows what he's looking for in a quarterback, and that if they do pick somebody in the second or third round, it's somebody they believe in. And then to me, I don't know where you feel about this. If you're picking a fourth round or later guy, maybe fifth round, I guess is fair. Fifth round or later guy, I don't. I mean, that to me is just kind of you're hoping he becomes a good backup.
Anything on the last day of the draft, I think you're just taking a developmental flyer.
Right. I actually think it might be worth the Colts taking a quarterback, because to me, I almost the other day I was texting our columnist Greg Doyle, and I was like, it almost seems like a waste of Frank Reich not to have a quarterback developing, just because he's that good and he can develop a guy. But then, and I was like, well, they haven't drafted anybody in the last few years, but theoretically he'd been developing Jacoby and Chad Kelly, so it's not like they were wasting that talent. So I guess in that sense, they still have those guys and they won't have to. But you do like to see, like, if you have a guy like Frank, even a guy like Nick Sirianni, who's had some success with quarterbacks, you'd like to get a young guy in there and see what you can get out of him.
Yeah, I think one thing about what Ballard has said, if they take somebody in the second or third round, I think he is saying, we really believe in this guy. And I don't think I'm out on a limb there. He has said it over and over and over again. It has to be the right fit. It has to be the right guy. Everything has to line up. So if they do take a quarterback in the second or third round, it is not. I do not think to me. I don't think that they're going, oh, we're just going to draft this and hope this turns out. I think they think he's a guy. Whoever, if they were to do that, but that's also part of the reason that neither of us think that they're actually going to do that.
Yeah, I just don't know. And again, you're looking at other people and they're speculating that they're not in on these guys. Like I don't know. Maybe Eason. And again, I don't know. And I know you're not a big Hurts guy. I'm not in love with him either. And then
I just don't like the Colts have said all along that the number one football trait they look for besides processing information is accuracy, and he's not accurate.
No,
he's just not. I watched a lot of Oklahoma football last year, and he's not accurate.
Yeah, I mean, again, and I'm sure I don't want to I agree with you from what I've seen. I will say draft people will, fans of Jalen Hurts would say he completed 70% of his passes his last 2 years.
Well, he plays in a spread. A lot of those passes are screens and flips. And
I agree with you. I agree with you. I don't think he's an accurate passer. I just want to address that people would immediately go, well, wait, he completed 69.7% of his passes last year for 32 touchdowns. It's like, okay, I get it, but I agree with what you're saying. That some of it doesn't. You have to really look into those numbers a little bit more. Also,
so
I could complete 60.
And I get that everyone's going to have favorites. It's just like. And I will say this: I do not consider myself to be a very good talent evaluator. But just based off of what I saw, it just didn't look. It didn't look like he had the kind of natural accuracy that you need to have in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, that Jacoby Brissett doesn't have.
Well,
if you don't like Jacoby Brissett struggling to complete passes, you probably shouldn't want Jalen Hurts.
It's a hint at the mock draft to come, listeners, that Joel will not be drafting Jalen Hurts in the second round. I want to get into, I thought that we talked about quarterbacks, and I think, again, we'll get into it more later, but I think the other major reason I think he's maybe not interested in quarterbacks, and the other thing, I think the major highlight of the press conference that he did was Chris Ballard said, I want to trade back. Pretty much. He said, I want more picks. And I think we all are pretty aware that the best place to trade back for him is going to be 34. It's where you can get the most bang for your buck there. You could trade back from 44 as well, and any other pick, really. But to me, again, if you're interested in a quarterback, you were like, okay, I need the highest capital possible to make sure I get the guy I want. And Ballard was like, I want more picks. I just want to pick more guys. And that just doesn't seem like a guy who's like locked in on a quarterback to me.
Also, I double checked it just so I had this. I wanted to go back to Jalen Hurts just for a second. He was 5 of 18 in the first half of the Peach Bowl. Sorry, not the Sugar Bowl. 5 of 18.
Yeah, that was
And if you watched all of his games, if you watched a lot of Oklahoma football, that was not that surprising.
No, well, people say, and I think they're right, Big 12 football is kind of like glorified 7-on-7, so.
Anyway, going back to what you said, yeah, I mean, and I get that too. Like when I do mock drafts, I think I told you a while ago. I think I like tweeted it. I always want more picks. Now the flip side of that is I'm a little bit like Ballard in that I would want more picks no matter which roster I was drafting for. But if you are trying to trade back, and if you want to get good picks with your more picks, you have to trade early. That also doesn't make you think someone's going up for a quarterback.
Yeah, like I said, I think if you're at 34 and you're in love with the second round quarterback, that's probably the place to get him. And maybe he will. I just think that because you don't really like, again, if you are in love with a second round quarterback, you don't want to really roll those dice and trade back and then be like, well, and then somebody jumps in front of you and takes the guy you want. To me, if you're looking for a quarterback and you're like, man, that guy slipped out of the first round, at 34 you're perfectly positioned to go get that guy. And so
right.
to me, it just seems like that's just not going to happen. And again, I thought the quote, I don't have it in front of me, but it was essentially, people are going to freak out if we don't draft a quarterback, but that might just happen. Essentially, is what he said. So, and he's happy. He's fine with it. He knows he's got no quarterbacks under contract in 2021. I honestly, I kind of think that he thinks Rivers is going to play 2 years, but I don't know.
You have to hope so. They keep saying that they still think Jacoby Brissett could develop, but it's so hard to imagine somebody having two shots at establishing themselves as a starter, and the second time with no one coming back to get it from them, and they had to go out and get somebody, and then somehow him going back to it. I think they're trying to respect Jacoby and what he's done in the locker room and what he's done as a player, working hard and stuff like that. I just cannot see him coming back from this to be the long-term starter.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that scenario is Rivers has a rough year, decides to retire. Do you really think they turn back to Jacoby next year in 2021? I just don't. I just can't see it.
I think the only way that it happens is if Rivers gets hurt at some point and Jacoby has a Foles-like run.
Well, for sure. If he has a Foles-like run, I think they definitely bring him back. But if we see, it's tough. If we see some blend of, first half of the season, second half of the season, Jacoby, I don't know what they do. I think you look at Jacoby Brissett and like the quarterback. I just don't know that you think we should be satisfied with that. That's the building block,
Right.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I'm with you. I think the way that Philip talked and the way that Frank and Chris talked about Phil Rivers, I think they're they're happy it's a 1-year deal. It's best for everybody to kind of play it by ear, but I think they're all kind of looking at it like, okay, it's like this can work for 2 years and give us time to figure out the quarterback situation.
Right.
So that was the two main things. I mean, again, if you want to talk about trading back a little bit more, you can. I like you said, I know I've seen a lot of your mocks. You've texted me a lot of them, and you're always trading back for like 3 and 4 second and third round picks.
Yeah.
I mean, again, if possible, I think the Colts will do that. I think I think Chris Ballard wants to do that. Honestly.
Yeah. No. There's the one draft simulator I use allows me to trade like every pick, and like sometimes I go in like going, okay, I'm only going to trade back once. I'm going to try to make this realistic, and then I trade back 3 times again anyway. It's hard not to want more picks, especially in a draft. One thing that does make me wonder is I've seen people say that they think that the strength of this draft is like 20 through 40.
Yeah.
And that would put the Colts right in that prime position.
For sure. That would almost make you want to
keep your 2 picks.
Yeah, trade up from 44 and make sure you get in there.
But that being said, when you start getting into like the strength of the draft is 20 to 40, that 20 to 40 is so different for every team. That eventually you might end up at 44 with having it, because their boards are just different. They're considerably different, and so I think that 34, 44 is right in that range. But there's also a chance that you can get, like with the wide receivers.
Yes.
As much as everybody thinks the wide receivers are deep and that you can get a great player deeper in the draft, then those grades at that position, you might be able to trade down and still get the player you wanted just because you wanted a certain player in it that everybody else didn't want.
I completely, to me, like, if you're trading back from 34, in my opinion, you can get a really good receiver still at 44 while adding draft capital. That's just one way to look at it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Then again, at 34, you could also get a guy that probably should have been a first-round pick at receiver, just because it's such a deep class.
Well, and I think you've said this before, but 34, if you have the 34th pick, you are in prime trade down range because people try to get up to get those guys that they thought should have been first-rounders and fell.
All the time. You look back at the history of these drafts, 30, 33, 34, 35, 36, those picks are traded. And
usually, forgive me if I'm wrong, but usually I think when people trade out of those picks, they don't have to drop that far.
No, and they don't. It depends. You don't usually get a huge haul, but Jacksonville. I think last year, Oakland moved from like 35 or 34 to 36, and then 36 back to 38, and just ended up adding like 2 late round picks. So,
you don't have to move back very far at all, and you get a couple extra picks in there. That 34th pick feels to me like if he's going to trade down, man. There's also a part of me that's like, Colts fans will riot if he trades down again. But
well, it depends. It depends who he gets at 44 or what he trades for, right? I don't know. It would be. I think the receivers really are that deep. Like, I think there's a chance you could get a guy like, I don't know, like a Michael Pittman at 44. You know, and I like Michael Pittman quite a bit. Maybe T Higgins at 34 if you're not trading back, and I don't know, maybe he slides to 44. Like, I don't know. Ayuk, like, there's just Raygor. There's just so many guys in that range that I think you could probably end up with one of those guys even if you trade back from 34.
Yeah. Well, so I looked up the Raiders' first one. They traded down 3 spots and essentially gave up 2 picks to move way up in the 4th round. So you're like right at the top of the 4th round.
Yeah.
The first one. And then, which is interesting, they actually got less picks out of that. But that's a spot last year, that top of the 4th roundish range. The Colts fans, if Colts fans remember, that's where the Colts traded up to get Kari Willis.
Right.
I think there's like a drop off kind of there. I think with teams, that they end up. It's the same thing as the top of the 2nd round. People end up trying to trade up to get to the top of the 4th round because they start to feel like there's a talent drop off there.
Yeah. I was wondering, actually, I was starting to put together some just ideas, and I was wondering if I had one of them, again, I'm not sure I'd even do this, but I was wondering what you thought of it. 34 to Oakland and this is a far drop, but these are 3rd-round picks. 80, 81, 91, and then I think I'd have to go down a little bit further, but it would be something like, 121?
Interesting.
So you get 4 picks. The Oakland actually has no 2nd-round picks this year. And Oakland, every time. Las Vegas has no 2nd-round picks this year. They have 3 thirds. So I think that's an interesting idea. But again, they have
You're giving up 1 second and getting 3 thirds back?
And a 4th.
I might do that.
It's a lot. Like I said, it's a long way to fall. You drop from 34 to 80. That's pretty much, that's more than a whole round. But 80, 81, 91, 121. And that math actually works out pretty close on the Jimmy Johnson scale. But anyway, it's just one thought. The other ones I looked at were 34 to Miami for 56 and 70. That's a little. I think the Colts benefit a little bit there, but I think that's kind of the tax of getting back to the 2nd round. And then the other one was Seattle, a pretty similar trade, 59 and 64 for 34. There's obviously, like you said, there's obviously those trades where they can trade back like 4 or 5 spots too.
Yeah. I think the chances of the Colts making the picks that are set up right now are pretty low. I think there's going to be at least a trade or 2.
Yeah, I think that's what he wants. I think that's what Chris Ballard wants. That's what he always wants. He always wants more picks. He only got 7 right now. I think I wrote somewhere 8, and that was a mistake. Obviously, they traded the 1st rounder, so they have 7. So yeah, I think he's going to want more. He's never had. Oh, I almost swore there. I think I did swear there. Sorry, guys. He said 29. He said 29 picks in 3 years. So I mean that's pretty much 10 picks a draft, and now he's at 7. So you can see where he's going to want to probably get more. It's just kind of the way he is.
I also think, and this is just me floating this. We might as well put it out there. I can't remember if I said it before or not, but I also think that maybe one of the ways they end up with an extra late round pick is they do what they've done the last couple of years and they trade a player.
Yep. One name jumps out to me.
Well, that's where I started with it. Is Albert Breer wrote today that he's heard that possibly Quincy Wilson could be available, and I've been saying that since middle of last season.
I was going to say, I think we've all thought at one point he's going to get cut or traded. So if you can get value for him, you might as well.
Now, usually those are just like 7th rounders, but I think that's possible too.
I like that you did shoot, by the way. You've fully adopted Phillip Rivers as your quarterback.
Shoot!
I was loving. I don't know if you read our colleague Greg Doyle's story on him and kind of like how they first met. But I think there were like 10 shoots in there. It was cracking me up.
You need to throw in a God Bless America. My high school basketball coach loved to use that instead of swearing. So we need to throw a God Bless America in there a couple times.
Okay, I like that one. That's good. I like the shoot just gets me though, and that's what I should have used instead of swearing. So again, apologies. But yeah, it's interesting. I think they will. Hey, actually, there was one other question I wanted to ask you. This is just based on the Peter King column, and I thought it was fun to look at. But there's some trade people. There's players he thinks are likely to get traded during the draft. Just curious if anybody piques your interest. I don't think this is something that Chris Ballard does very often. I mean, DeForest Buckner was the first time he's given up a pick for a player, but Trent Williams, Yannick Ngakoue, the Patriots guard Joe Thuney, Andy Dalton, Leonard Fournette, Alshon Jeffrey.
I mean, I want Yannick Ngakoue, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, Yannick Ngakoue was out.
Just because it's in division. But I want him.
Yeah.
Team.
I'm intrigued by Yannick would be the I think they're looking for a first, and the Colts don't have it. But 34 might be interesting if they can't get a first. So that's at least, again, if they're willing to do an in-division trade. Which, I mean, we heard that they were willing to talk about Nick Foles with the Colts. So maybe. And then that's obviously a different situation, but just the fact that they were willing to talk makes it a little more likely. And then I know you and I are going to disagree on this, but depending on the draft capital, I would be interested in Alshon Jeffrey.
I mean, if it's low.
Yeah, I'm talking like 5th or 6th.
If it's one of the 6-rounders, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
But, which, I mean, that might be what it costs. Who knows?
Right.
Especially if it's a trade on the last day of the draft after like 6 teams have all picked 3 wide receivers, including the Colts.
That's a great lead-in because, like you said, you probably won't trade for Alshon if you draft a bunch of receivers. Do you expect multiple receivers in this draft for the Colts?
Yes.
Yeah, because you and I talked about this. You and I kind of expected them to sign a receiver or 2 in free agency before drafting.
Well, so there's 2 reasons. I expect they need receive. Ballard has said he likes T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell and Zach Pascal. But even if you like all those players,
yeah,
you still need more.
Yeah.
You came out of camp with 6 of them last year. And so I think that's one reason that you're going to see more than one wide receiver pick. And the other reason is Ballard has said over and over again how they make picks. Usually when it gets down there, they're looking at their draft board and there's one player way above everybody else, right?
Yeah.
And so you just take that guy. So here's the thing. If the receiver class is as good, as far head and shoulders above what everybody else is, what every other position is, as everybody thinks it is,
yeah,
then that means as you get into the 3rd and 4th round and later than that, a lot of times that guy up there is most likely to be a wide receiver just by numbers sake. And so I think that there's going to be multiple receiver picks just because of the depth of and if you're really drafting BPA, then as those receivers get pushed down by all the other talent in the class,
yeah,
that's going to be the guy.
Do you think it's possible they use 2 of their high picks on receivers?
I think it's possible, but not likely.
So you don't see 34, 44, or even 44 and whatever they trade back for or whatever on receivers?
I think it's possible, but not likely because people think you can get like good starters in the third and fourth rounds.
Okay, yeah, and obviously, we've been talking a lot about.
I think it's more likely to have one on the second day and one on the third day.
I agree with that.
Ballard said the other day, we think there are guys who are starters and we think there are guys who can play a role. And to me, that was him saying, we think we can get a guy who can start. That's the second or third rounder. And then we think there are guys who can play roles. That's the bigger guys.
Right. I think you and I talked about this, right at the end of the season. Like, I think Zach Pascal fits in nice and snug as a wide receiver 4. And again, like, if you're injured, he's a fine, like, wide receiver 3, right? So that's kind of what you're hoping for, is you draft somebody as a starter to play along with Paris Campbell and T.Y. Hilton, and then you use Zach as a wide receiver 4. And then, again, if somebody gets hurt, you feel okay about bumping him up. Does that sound? And then you draft somebody else to kind of develop behind Pascal. That sound about right?
Yeah.
And obviously you still have Reese Fountain, and that's pretty much it right now. So that's about all they have in terms of guys they can trust going forward. So,
if anybody this is to bring things full circle, I just saw this come across my Twitter. If anybody's curious what these GMs' home draft setups are, go to John Lynch's Twitter account, and he just tweeted his. I see what appears to be 6 screens, 3 phones, and a keyboard.
6 screens, 3 phones, and a keyboard.
It is impressive what he's got set up there.
Oh, I got it. Oh man, why does he have those 3? He's got 3 landlines. I just thought you would mean cell phones.
Well, he's got 3 landlines in case something happens and the power goes out. Or the phone line goes, or the cell phone tower goes out.
Look at that. Look, even on the far left, he's got that little, like, what's it called? Outlet? What are those called? My God. With, like, 8 plugs in it.
Surge protector.
Surge protector. Thank you. Man, technology, Jim, strikes again.
No, this is remarkable. Anyway.
I love it.
So
you're right.
If you want to look, that's what, and I would bet Chris Ballard had the same thing. We didn't get a good look at it because he said he turned it around so he couldn't see what he was dealing with. But I bet it's the same type of thing. Man, my 2 computers and a TV in my office right now, I'm feeling very inadequate.
Oh, I'm only gonna have like 1 up, so I feel bad. Maybe I'll have to go get a second or something like that, or get open. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. Before we end this, because like I said, we'll do a more prospect heavy, thorough mock type of thing on Wednesday. But I just was curious, like, one position I think we've talked about tight ends. You wrote about it. You wrote about receivers. I think we've kind of talked about corners since they've signed a few. I think something we've kind of totally ignored, and the Colts have ignored, and everything's kind of ignored, is Jabal Sheard and who plays that spot.
Yeah, I agree. I think part of the reason it's been ignored is that Jadeveon Clowney is taking his good, sweet time deciding what he wants to do. And I don't say that to mean that I think the Colts are necessarily in on him.
Right.
Because if you want to maintain cap flexibility, it's going to be hard to sign him, especially on a short-term deal.
Right. I mean, if he's open to like a 1-year deal, then maybe. But if he wants 4 or 5 years, then yeah, no.
You won't be, because you won't be able to roll over very much next year if you sign him for what he allegedly wants and what he's probably going to get. But the reason I bring him up is that he has sort of paralyzed one part of the free agent market.
Right.
Everson Griffin hasn't signed. Marcus Golden hasn't signed. Sheard hasn't signed. And all of those guys kind of have injury questions that might make teams balk a little bit. But I think it's more likely that Clowney's just holding up that part of the market.
Okay. So
So I think there's a possibility that they're waiting on that. But there is a spot at defensive end that I think they could definitely add.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Do you see that as a position they address in the draft? From what I've looked at, it's not exactly a deep draft in that regard.
I think Chris Ballard is always on the lookout for pass rushers, specifically edge-type guys. So, and he is fond of saying that he thinks strong or thin, deep or whatever, you can find players at every spot. So I think there's still a spot chance that they're doing that.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a chance they definitely go that direction. Like I said, if you look at the needs, receiver, tight end, corner, I would say tackle, maybe safety, depending on what they're doing with Malik Hooker. We don't know yet. He was kind of coy about whether or not they're going to pick up their fifth-year option on Malik. I wouldn't be surprised if they addressed corner, edge, safety, tight end, receiver, tackle in this draft and don't get a quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's probably. I wouldn't be surprised either. So the Colts have just under $24 million in cap space available. If you are signing, if Clowney wants a short-term deal, even at 17 or 18 million, you're all the way down into the single digits, and we haven't really seen them done that.
Well, that's only for this year though, because you're clearing what, 50 million or 46 million off the cap in quarterbacks.
You do clear a bunch of it, but the Colts have also had a lot of space by rolling space over, and so you wouldn't be able to roll anything over.
Yeah, that's true. The only thing like I said, they clear the quarterbacks, they clear Justin Houston, they clear a ton of big money off of they're going to have a ton of cap space next year just on a contract expiring next year.
If they don't make a move on the edge, I think this is the way it happens. Al-Qadim Muhammad has played a ton of snaps for them in the last couple of years. He's not like a difference maker, but he's a good rotational guy. I was told when they signed Buckner that Danico Autry could be involved out there.
Right. And we still have Tyquan Lewis to deal with. And
Tyquan Lewis, Ballard said at the end of the season that he thought he would play more of a tackle at an end. And then you have Banogu and Toure. So I think that they probably could use a player there, but there's also a way they don't make a move there and go with what they've got.
I would like I said, if they made a move on the edge, I would be interested just because I don't know, Justin Houston was great last year, but you don't know how much longer that's going to last. You don't know for sure if Kamoko's going to come back great from the injury. Banogu played well in spurts, but there's a chance that at the end of there's just a real possibility at the end of next year, you and I are talking about, man, they got a glaring hole on the edge right now. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's definitely a possibility.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see Ballard kind of maybe cut that off at the knees real quick and just go get one if there's a good guy available in the second or third round. But and he drafts edge rushers pretty consistently, so we might see one of those. But yeah, any closing thoughts, Joel, before we go away for 2 days, and then we can kind of tell them our plan is to do a mock on Wednesday, but we're also planning on doing a late night podcast on Thursday to kind of recap the first round and preview what will be available on the second round on Friday.
There's going to be for people who like it when we podcast a lot. This is going to be as much as you're going to get from us, really, at any time.
Yeah, we got none now, Wednesday, Thursday, and I'm guessing we're probably going to do one Friday after the second day of the draft, but we'll see. Obviously, we'll just kind of have to play it by ear.
If not Friday, we'll definitely do one to wrap things up after the draft is over.
Yeah, so Friday or Saturday. Yeah, you're right. Probably wouldn't do both, but that's what 1, 2, 3, 4 podcasts in a week. So yeah, we're gonna hit it pretty hard this week. So yeah, any other closing thoughts before we go?
Just take whatever you're seeing with a grain of salt. Everything starts to go kind of haywire here with the rumors, and they go all over the place. So sometimes it's best to just kind of let this sit back and let it go.
My closing thought, that's a great one. My closing thought is prepare yourselves mentally, physically, with whatever drugs or alcohol you have to take for the Colts not to check quarterback this year.
And also watch draft day.
Also, that sounds like that. I said drugs and alcohol, so yeah, that's what you should probably. That's Joel's drug of choice is $7 on Amazon Prime. And with that, we are gone. Thank you guys. We'll see you again on Wednesday.